Facebook has started to delete the back videos of the series.
Oh,
the older ones more than a month old, it doesn't like us keeping.
Okay, well, that's their purview, I guess.
Yeah, they've changed their policy, and basically any new videos created only last a month. And actually, what they're going to do in June is they're going to remove all old videos.
Well, they're all gone. Well, not much you can do.
It's their policy. I know we can't complain. It's their policy. It's just a nuisance.
Well, what do you expect from a company that backed Donald Trump?
Yeah, they don't want people like us to have an opinion, do they?
No, we have to vet it through MAGA first.
Right. So, have you been fined by one of these local regional speed cameras?
Oh, welcome to Talking Niagara.
Yeah.
The voice of reason, the voice of truth.
Your news talk show for Niagara Falls, Niagara, and surrounding areas. There we go.
Yes.
Okay, welcome everybody. And welcome Mike Cushman. Good morning.
Hi, Metaphysical Mike.
All right. I'm still curious as to how we can manage to give us notes before the broadcasters even started. Because I think that actually what it does on YouTube is it shares there first.
Oh, okay.
All right. It opens the channel up first for a live show. But anyway, okay. So have you been fined one of these regional speed cameras?
Yes, indeed. I just told you last week.
Yeah. They're starting to become a nuisance, aren't they?
And there's going to be more of them because as we find, we have more and more traffic difficulties. The speed bumps and stuff like that aren't exactly working as well as they hoped they would. And so you're going to get more and more of these cameras.
Yeah.
They'll have a sign, they'll say new. There'll be people going around breaking them, but eventually they're going to be ubiquitous because you can't put a cop everywhere, that kind of thing. So they're going to put up these cameras, and that's going to slow things down. It certainly slowed things down on Montrose Road, close to Greendale School. That's where I got hit. I've been
past that several times now. And in fact, I understand that one's been broken. Somebody's taken it out.
Well, it's still, I don't know how many people do that, but I can tell you right now that it really did slow things down there. Because I think because it's a 4-lane across, people assume it's a 60 or whatever. Yeah. At least I think I did. And I drove up and down there constantly forever. Well, and I have noticed that all the people are driving much slower through there now. So
when you get these in England, we used to have these where they were fixed in a fixed location. What would happen is the traffic would go fast, slow down, and go fast again.
Well, as long as it slows them, I can't complain. I got it for doing 61 in a 50. I was passing by the school, but of course I didn't see any children or anything like that. So I remember that when I got nailed, but I can't complain because I agreed with that kind of thing, particularly in and around school zones. So I can't complain that I got hit and I was going faster, but I was just doing what I had done day after day after day after day, the same speed all the time when I go up to see my mom and come back the same route. And it was a big surprise to me to get it. And this is it right here. This is what you get. You get
a picture of your vehicle on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen them. And by the way, this is the only thing about this that I do not agree with is the fact that you can't negotiate them.
You can go to court. You can.
You cannot go to court. You cannot go to court.
Well, you can go. It says so here somewhere.
No,
There
there is no
there's a
negotiation
place
on
where
that.
I think I said the other page away where you could play guilty or not. And one of the guys in my Toastmasters actually did go to court to see what he could do about it. He didn't plead guilty, and there was no reprieve for him at all, though.
No, that's what I'm saying. The form may say you can plead not guilty, but there is no negotiating these away. They will not negotiate. End of story. You're paying the fine. That's it. There's no my car was stolen on that day. Find the person who stole my car.
Or I lent it to someone that day.
Yeah. There's none of that. The ones in Niagara Falls right now are on Montrose between Watson and Lundy's Lane, and that's the one we just talked about, and on McLeod between Oakwood and Drummond. Right?
Yeah, my son got nailed on that one.
Yeah, and actually going forward, there's none in Niagara Falls. Oh, Niagara Falls on Lundy's Lane between Brookfield and Maine is from May till August. Brookfield and Maine. That's literally a Brookfield's just about just west of Drummond, right? Just west of Dorchester, right? And Main Street, which is actually not even Lundy's Lane there.
Yeah, that's quite a long stretch there.
That's quite a long stretch, but I'm sure once we figure out where it is, everybody will know it.
Well, for one thing, you're not going to be able to go too fast there anyway. Most of the time,
Most of the time,
down that part of the road.
Yeah,
there's many lights and people are turning and such. So to go there quickly, it's
very troublesome. Yes.
Good morning, Betty Zoom.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So what are people saying? Snowing outside. I'm not seeing snow here. Okay. So the worst is someone in front slow to cross. When you want to go, it's a yellow red light.
Yeah. It's really deadly out there right now. Like the last couple of days, I take a left-hand turn Montrose and Thorlstone Road, and when I go to see my mother, and I'm in the intersection trying to turn left, and people are pouring over just speeding up during the yellow and going through right on the red.
Yeah.
And there I'm stuck in the intersection with the light turn red, and I got to turn now because now everybody's now coming, but I was stuck in the intersection because people had gone through the yellow and the red like in droves, and that's happened the last few days in a row. And I'm going to get caught one of these times, but it's not my fault because once that light turns yellow, you should be able to complete the left-hand turn.
Yeah,
but you can't because there's just everybody just speeds up to get through the yellow, and then a few even people go through the red.
Oh, I know. It's there's a lot of people out there that are not obeying the rules.
Yeah, especially all around the times of anywhere from 4 to 5, that happens quite a bit.
Yeah.
So I expect in due course, within the next 10 years at least, there'll be cameras at critical corners in the city.
I was going to ask about red light cameras, right? Red light cameras is the one area we haven't gotten into in the Niagara region. What happens if you're turning right on a red light camera? I don't have the answer to that one.
Oh, well, that's something. Yeah, that's something.
You're doing a legal right-hand turn on a red light camera. Right.
Well, I don't know. Maybe there's something in it that allows for that.
Yeah, I would hope so, but you'd figure that out. Or maybe when the they figure it out by the fact that they watch the video and you go around the corner.
Maybe, who knows?
And the situation is that we used to have red light cameras in Britain all the time. And again, you get to know them. There was a case where there was a red light camera, and they were on police patrol duty with a police crossing, with the police directing traffic through the thing. And he's directing traffic through a red light camera. It's like, I'm not moving. I'm not going past this red light camera. Ain't going to happen for anything in the world. Right? And I'm stuck there, and I'm sat like this because I'm going, nope, I am not moving. He's waving me on, and I'm going, nope, I'm not moving. Right? Because it's a red light camera there.
And then they call you gridlock Giblett because you're holding everybody back up.
The problem is, I'm not going to have to explain that one to the court, right? I'm not going to be the one who's going to be calling that police officer in,
Well,
and he's got to take care of that he's got to think about that kind of thing as a police officer. Anyway, we haven't got red light cameras in this area yet, but we will.
They're coming.
They're coming.
Yeah. By the way people are driving.
Yeah. And by the way, the interesting thing is about this is that when I first came to North America, we'd had cameras in Britain for like 10 years. The speed cameras in Britain, most of them are in fixed locations, and there's always prior warning. And as I said, you've got the normal people who are going 75 and a 50, who slow down to 50 for the 100 meters of the red light of the camera, and then speed away again.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
And the only people who
can down at least is as long as they slow down in critical areas where there's been a lot of accidents, particularly in school zones and things like that. If they slow down in those areas, that's good.
Yeah. Well, yeah. In a way, the school zones, but if they do in school zones, they actually have to be very clear that this is what the speed limit in the school zone is when the camera's going.
It doesn't matter. Everybody will figure it out.
Anyway, yeah. All right. I'm a bit of a cynic with these ones. Right. How is GUS Town going? Right.
GUS Town, yeah.
Well, the story says from Ghost Town to GUS Town, but I'm like, how is it going? Downtown Niagara Falls downtown with the university. They're now in their second spring semester program, and they've got 2,000 students they're boasting.
Well, yeah, and most of them are foreign students. That's pretty much expected. It's a big deal to come over here and go to school because the opportunities of staying is much more increased. So this is an accredited school, but it's a private university, and this of course is giving the propaganda from the school's point of view. It says the University of Niagara Falls, Canada started an inaugural term in April, and now there's 2,000 people. The vast majority are from offshore, and they're in the Hatch building. So they're basically, and then it tells you the kind of programs it has. It has mostly Masters of Management, Masters of Data Analysis, and Masters of Art in Digital Media and Global Communications. Now, if these foreign students are coming here and these are truly accredited courses, then they will get jobs here because these are high-end. They're master's graduates, and also there's honors of Bachelor of Business Administration and honors of Bachelor of Science and Biomedical. These higher end parts of the educational system, you'd have to be able to prove your worth to get into these programs in the first place. In other words, you'd have to have done.
Can I just say, you said Masters of Business program. MBAs are, every school in the world has an MBA. MBAs are 10 a penny, worthless.
Okay, that. What about? But what about Bachelor of
Those things
Science
are
in
different.
Biomedical?
Those things are different because that's interesting. I don't know anything about those types of programs, but Masters of Business Administration programs are just 10 a penny. Every corner store's got an MBA
In a master's level?
at a master's level. An
Okay.
MBA is a master's level program,
Okay.
right? And so
Well,
you can
yeah.
almost buy them these days. I'm being very cynical, but but there's so many MBAs, they're practically worthless. And unless you've got an MBA at Stanford or something, they're pretty well useless.
Well, there was a time a lot of engineers would take a minor in business because quite often they want, once an engineer gets into a company or whatever, then they're tasked with a lot of business type of things to do.
It's your only route. It's your only route to management is to have a business degree as well.
Yeah, so you found that a lot of engineers would have a minor in business, which I thought was back in the 70s when my friends were going to university. I was pretty curious about that. Why business? It didn't seem to mix. But then once I worked in a company and I saw the engineering department, yeah, they are overwhelmed with business stuff once they get to a certain level.
Yeah.
So the interchangeability of those two can be useful to anybody in their career. Now,
that's actually true of a lot of subjects. They end up tagging a business, a business minor on many subjects: computer science and business, chemistry and business.
Now, this guy, the University of Niagara Falls provost and vice president academic David Gray gives opening remarks. Of course, he's spelling out the most positive type of look. He mentions, of course, that the old King Eddie Hotel, which was bought and raised by the city of Niagara Falls and turned into a parking lot, will now be a kind of accommodation for students. It will enhance the downtown. We'll see about that. It does need life put into it.
I hope so. I hope so. I really do hope so. Even a small amount of student accommodation will actually help the area. In fact, the students being in that building, the good thing about it is that, like the coffee shops and the sandwich bars down Queen Street, must all be taking on extra business because of this.
Yeah, well, remember too. Also, there's a microscope now on foreign students. So these people are all doing masters. I met one of them. He was a well-to-do businessman from Bangladesh, and his wife wanted to continue her education, and she came to get a master's of business or something. Or I don't know what she was, but she wanted to do that. There was an opening here in Niagara Falls. So I thought that was a little odd, but there should have been a lot of schools available to her more locally. But I think the thing is, you get your foot into Canada, and then you could stay or at least establish business, maybe connections in Canada. The whole point, I think, is most of the students that are coming here are with hopes to stay in Canada. And if they do graduate and there is openings for them to come here and to pursue their education and careers, that's a good thing if we need those. But what happens, I think, in a lot of places other than this school is you get tons and tons and tons of people going into hospitality.
Yeah.
So you've got 20 jobs available for people who graduate from hospitality, particularly on the college level, and you've got 2,000 taking it. And then I was talking to one young lady. She was from India. Her parents come up with a lot of money to send her here, and the government says, well, now you got to go back. And that's exactly what they didn't want to happen. They wanted her to come over here and get a foothold in Canada.
Yeah.
But the expectations have been reduced because the government did not manage this well enough, and we have an overblown amount. So we have all kinds of students now in Canada that can't get work, and shouldn't have expected to come here and stay. I mean, if you're a master's of biomedical science, well, yeah, you're going to have a good chance of staying because there's a need there. But if you're the 150th college graduated person in hospitality,
who cares?
Yeah, like, yeah, we don't need that,
Yeah, because there's already dozens of hospitality. There's way too many hospitality degrees around, and hospitality is the it is the sociology degree. Hospitality is the modern sociology degree. You remember the old sociology degrees that were pretty well worthless when you got out of college?
Yeah, there were those people who took it very seriously and moved up into honors or MAs and things like that. Yeah, they did get jobs, or the ones that did the very best in sociology, they could get jobs. But most of the people were stuck with it. Psychology was a big thing too. Lots of people took psychology and expected to get jobs, but there was a huge interest in psychology. Another one was criminology. A lot of people go into that and think they're going to be cops or investigative reports.
Well, criminology only has an impact if you're going to if you're going to be a police officer, but if you're going to be or actually in one of the criminal assistance organizations, right? Maybe if you work for legal aid or something, criminology may help there. Criminology has often been tagged to law degrees, though, but it's only really generally of value in the marketplace, I think, if it is tagged to a law degree.
Well, a lot of these people that take like crime and punishment or policing or whatever,
yeah,
they end up being mall cops at the best.
Yeah.
So there's just too many, and so it says here from Grace is one of the big things from our perspective is that we want to ensure that there's residential accommodation available for our students. We don't want to be bringing students if they have nowhere should be better to live. So that always been a key part. So they're talking about the residents and so on. And of course, we still have that. They're bringing a lot of them are bringing their families, so a lot of them are well-to-do enough to be able to rent places when they bring their whole family. But I think a big part of it, if these universities like ours, it will certainly enhance the downtown. They say that most of their students are foreign, which means like 99% of them. But they do say they're trying to attract more domestic students. So the mix would be nice. I'm not if these programs are accredited and they're really quite worthwhile in the job market, if there's needs for them, who could say anything against that? Yeah, bring the students in, let them graduate, and if there is a need in our economy for them, yeah. I just have this feeling that like any other school, when the students come in, they don't want to go home when they're supposed to, the ones that we can't use. I still think it's kind of like part of it is a opening to stay in Canada, which is fine if we can get them jobs.
Yeah, it's the fact that they need to be tied to Canadian jobs at the end of the day.
Yes,
and if you're bringing a student in, and they come and they qualify and they're like first, second, or third in the class type thing, even if they're only 10th or 12th in the class, that's fine. But they should have like a 2-year period at which they're allowed to try and get work in their field. If they don't have work in their field, i.e., if you're working down flipping burgers at McDonald's, you're gone.
Yes. So basically, so it's a mixed blessing. I think probably by overall it's better than not, because it will help enhance downtown. So downtown will be a little university community, so that hopefully little shops and restaurants and stuff like that will do well. You could see a university student going for a little bit of a lunch or something like that and supporting.
Yeah.
But the idea that they might go over to the soup kitchen, which is not too far away, and get their meal is still something that we have to worry about.
Yeah, I prefer, for them to be going downtown, and even if they're eating at, even if they are only eating, small things, or going to the cake shop or something, briefly, that's fine. But a soup kitchen, they shouldn't be restraining our resources. But we know that's a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, so has anybody heard of C2025F2 Swan?
Oh, that's
there's a new comet in the sky.
New comet discovered by an amateur astronomer in Australia. So often, the amateur astronomers are the ones that find these comets or asteroids or other things like that. And my hat's off to the guy. Well done. And what he's done, it appears to me, is there is lots of images that come from the Space Telescope, and what he's done is he's scanned these images. He hasn't done it in the conventional way where you take your own telescope and search the heavens and find things. In this case, he's taken the data that come from, it's not the Hubble anymore.
But that's the way the professionals find these objects.
Well, they're doing it now mostly because of the extraordinary amount of photographs that can come from the Space Telescope.
Yeah. What you do is you do this area of the sky, tomorrow this area of the sky, following day this area, following day, and you can track the moving objects.
Well, basically, it says the comet has been given the official designation, which is provided, like you just said, C/2025 space F2 in brackets Swan, which is the International Astronomical Union's minor planet center. Oh God, it goes on. And anyway, it's coming from the just.
Well, they're saying it should get
camera board, NASA and European Space Agency's Solar Heliospheric Observatory. And basically, it says here that the amateur astronomer Michael Mattiazzo used Swan images and available to the public. And he previously used the same method to discover a comet in 2020. This guy's good. So if you want to see it, the trouble is you're going to have to look into the eastern sky just before dawn and in and around where the Pegasus is. And you're going to have a pair of binoculars, and it's not going to be too exciting because it's just going to look like a fuzzy little light in the sky. And
but that fuzzy little light, when it comes closer, you'll see the tail. You'll see, in fact, the pictures that they've published already are showing the tail. But once it gets closer to the sun, we should see it from the it becomes a lot brighter, and we will see the tail.
Good show. So if you want to look at it, look in the eastern sky, and you can find aids in looking for it. But in the meantime, you're going to have binoculars, and it's going to have to be a pretty clear night too.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing about this is, remember, sun, the moon, Venus, Sirius, city city lights, etc., are all going to kind of interfere when you're looking at the sky.
Yeah, there's light pollution is going to get in the way.
Yeah, a lot of light pollution out there, and the sun. Basically, you've got to be up before the sunrise and look at it at that point.
Yeah, that's the best time so far. However,
always watching the sky, says Betty Zoom.
Good show. Way to go.
There you go. I don't know where in the did they say where in the east? I didn't spot that. Where in the east?
It's the east, in the east, in among the Pegasus constellation.
Pegasus. Okay. Yeah, not sure off the top of my head where that is, but can find that out.
Well, east, low in the sky at dawn is your best, or just prior to dawn is your best chance. Yeah. That's when it rises.
And it probably isn't big enough to be seen.
Not by the naked eye yet.
Yeah.
You can pick it up with a pair of binoculars, however.
Yeah.
But that's tough to do.
Yeah. So where do we? Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, that's tough to do, and it's probably going to be a few weeks before we get there to a better visibility.
May 1st is supposed to be the best day, according to the article. That's what I get from it. May 1st will probably be the best observation day. So leading up to that and right after that, you'll probably get it. That one back in the 90s, I forget the name of it. I remember.
Are we talking about Hale Bopp?
No, I think it was the one. I don't know which one it was. I think it's the one that started with a K, had the Japanese name, but I'm not quite sure. But I saw it. I remember coming home from work. I did the late shift in Nanticoke, and I was coming back. It was a pitch black night. I was out in the country because I had to drive through the country to get back home, and I just happened to look to my left. I knew the comet was out there, and I'd seen just the flickers of it at home, but there it was, really dark, and no moon that night. And I looked to my left, and there it was. It was huge in the sky. I actually pulled over and had a good long look at it.
Yeah,
and it was just huge. It was really bright, and I was amazed.
There was the one Hale Bopp, which was actually you could see from. We could see. I was in law school at the time, or doing my LLB at the time, and you could actually see that one in the night sky, even from in London.
I thought Hale Bopp was a rapper.
No, Hale Bopp was a comet. It had two tails, by the way.
Oh, a double tailer.
Yeah, a double tailer. That was the thing about Hale Bopp. And most have double tails, but the thing about the secondary tail on many of them is that they're not visible to the naked eye, and in fact they're on a different spectrum than what we can see. We can see out. We can't see that spectrum.
Okay, so let's talk about the stock market.
Well, markets and tariffs. Markets and tariffs are kind of where we are for the rest of the show, I think. Nasdaq, but the issue here is what you showing your board for.
The reason why I wrote something down. So we know that Donald Trump backed off on his overall tariffs, all those tariffs, and reduced it to one level, 10% across the board one. And that is, of course, because the stock market kept plunging. But what was more important was the Treasury and securities and bonds were being devalued as well. Normally, when the stock market tanks, people take their money and put it into bonds and treasuries because they're much more secure. but people were selling those as well, which would make the government debt even harder to pay off. So that's the big staunch of flow that scared everybody, including Donald Trump. And I tell you why the pressure was on the president, because I looked this up. Well, I didn't look it up, but I found it that we know the wealth gap in the United States and the West overall, but what percentage do you think that 0.1% of the richest people have in stocks?
Probably quite a high percentage, like 80 or 90%.
Well, no, 0.1%, just 0.1% of the richest Americans, that top 1.1% owns 25% of the stocks.
Yeah.
The top 1%, that's 10 times more than that, that's 50%. So 1% of the richest Americans own half of the stocks, securities, and bonds.
Yeah.
And the top 10% own nearly 90% of it. Those are the richest, most powerful people in the country, and that's where the pressure came from.
And the key and the key factor yesterday is the Dow surged 2,900 points, its biggest ever gain
since 2001 or something. Yeah. Now the problem was that's because Trump had to back down, and if you were watching the lead up to all of this, and there was a number of people, and the reason why I listened to them, I try to find comments about the stock market and what's going on. So when I watch the videos, I look for people who are the most calmest ones, the ones that don't necessarily detract Trump, or Trump hasn't got much to do with it. They just analyze what's going on. And many of them said pretty much the only get out strategy he would have is to pause the tariffs for 90 days. So I kept seeing these pop up on among commentators who are not associated with CNN or Fox or anything like that. So they said, well, pretty much he's going to have to get a get out strategy because the stocks will continue to tank because and then now they bounced up a little bit when they said that people were coming to negotiate tailor-made deals, but when the big but it didn't last, and they started tanking again, and that had to stop. And so it looks as if Trump took somebody's advice and put a 90-day hold on.
The interesting thing in all of these articles that we saw, the one thing that I get to is the visual image of a day trader on the New York stock exchange, and the smile that's on his face, as if, hey, this just saved my job.
Well, yeah, I don't know, but it was like around 1 o'clock. Prior to 1 o'clock, Trump put out there, be calm, take it easy, we're going to be great. Then a little while later, he comes up with, now's a good time to buy stocks. And right after that, he announces the 90-day. So if you were listening closely and he says, now's the time to buy, you would have been able to guess that there was going to be a change.
Yeah, you should have auctioned your house and put money down on stocks at that point.
Yeah. Now, the way Trump described it is, he said, when asked why he stalled it and backed down, he, of course, the reporters wouldn't say back down because he'd just call them fake news. But they said, well, how come you stopped it? He says, well, everybody was yipping and yapping and getting nervous. And he says, I have to be pliable. Basically, it says I got to be able to change my plans. If you go right up against the wall and you can't crash through it, then you got to change your plans and go over it, under it, or around it. So basically, admitting that his first that it didn't work. Whatever he wanted to accomplish that first time didn't work. Of course, right now we're boiling down to just a fight between China and the U.S.
Yeah, if we're ending up then with 10% tariffs for the rest of the world, and the fight is between China and the US, I think everybody's kind of shrugging their shoulders and saying, okay, we can live with that.
Yeah, they can't for now, but it's not over. And the 90-day thing, and they say they had. I mean, he's crude. He said in one of his speeches that all these countries are coming to him and kissing his ass, trying to make a deal. That is, oh man, that is so vulgar. That he should characterize all these countries coming and kissing his ass.
Yeah.
God, that's bad. I think who is putting the gun to him is the richest 10% of the people who own nearly 90% of those stocks.
Yeah.
They've lost a lot of wealth. And it's not just the people, the 401k who retirement funds and that are getting nervous. That's the bulk of the people. But the people with real power, the top 10% of the United States, and particularly the top 1% who own half of the stocks and securities and stuff, weren't too happy with him. So he had to do an about face.
Well, they've been losing money. They've been losing money for weeks now. A lot of money
in the last few days in a big way.
Yeah.
But that's all turned around now. So the stock was looking for a little bit of positive news. When the stall came, went back up. So across the board, 10% tariff is a lot easier to understand. To make a whole lot of tailor-made to say, well, this is going on until we make all these tailor-made agreements with different countries. That takes months to do.
Yeah.
There's a whole raft of things they have to talk about. So the first one will be Japan, probably second will be South Korea and Vietnam, and that will probably go on. And in the end, the tariffs won't be all that bad in the end. But this is still an issue. It still is discomforting to investors. This isn't over yet, and I think even in his best world, you could not have done these tailor-made agreements and settle the stock market because the tailor agreements take so long to do. If you got 75 countries lining up to kiss your ass, then as he puts it,
doing a tailor-made agreement with the UK is going to take months of negotiation. Doing a tailor-made agreement with France is going to take months of negotiation, and they're all going to be going on with the relevant departments in the US government, the Trade Department or whoever, and that is not going to be over in days. That's going to take months.
Well, for instance, if the U.S. wants to sell beef to Europe, and their standards of beef are not the same, that has to be sorted out.
Yeah.
Right now they say, they're not buying our beef. Well, because it's got hormones in it, and they don't accept that hormone thing. If they bred the cattle for the European market without using the hormones, that would be a different story. But they don't have that capacity yet. Also, Trump pointed out that 90,000 factories left the U.S. and went elsewhere. He blames free trade agreements for that, but you cannot build 90,000 factories in a few months.
Yeah,
it takes years,
and exactly.
You have to convince your investors that the policies will not change.
Yes, exactly, and building local factories, setting up a factory. Each factory you set up is potentially millions of dollars, even small ones. And yes, they have reaped great advantage because they employ local jobs wherever they are set up. But they take months to set up. We were talking last year about these EV factories coming here to Ontario, and how they're going to take at least 5 years to even be in process of manufacturing.
Yeah, exactly. And and you have to convince your investors to stay with it because there's a rules-based order to how you do the economy. And that's why aluminum manufacturers are so put out by what Trump has done, because they use the NAFTA agreement that Trump had negotiated and took their aluminum to where it was the best being able to smelt, particularly in Quebec, because they have vast amounts of hydropower, and then said, okay, we're going to put a 25% tariff on that aluminum.
Yeah.
So the aluminum producers said, look, we played by the rules. We did what the agreement that you signed. And so we included North America as one economic unit. And now you're turning your back on that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of confusion out there. But I'm not so sure that the stock market has rallied, but it was just looking for one little positive voice, one kind of, and it wasn't the fact that it went only down to 10%. It went down to the point where everybody was secure and know that it's going to be 10% for 3 months. There's not going to be any changes.
Yeah, exactly. And 10% for 3 months is enough for the stock market to breathe a sigh of relief and say business as normal, guys.
Yeah, they don't have the complicated, convoluted tariff regimen that he first came out was just mind-boggling.
Yeah.
But we'll see what happens in the long run. The fentanyl tariffs on us are still there. These are unjustified, of course. More fentanyl, as Rand Paul has recently said. What are you doing? You don't want to. Why are you doing this to Canada when more on the basis of fentanyl? When more fentanyl comes from the United States and goes into Canada than the other way around, it's unjustified. You can't make it a matter of security.
Yeah.
So that's where we're up to with all this. The rest of the world is breathing a temporary sigh of relief, but the fact is he backed down, but not with China. So the battle will continue with China. Now, everybody has said the same. It's not just the United States that says this, but China doesn't play by the rules. And so the United States making it look as if they're the only ones that are getting hurt by this. Everybody has complained about the same thing, and the world hasn't taken the proper action to fight this against China. Maybe this will focus that against China, because during this whole thing, this whole tariff battle he has with the rest of the world, including Canada and Mexico, everybody is telling them, we're not the enemy. China is the enemy. China is the one that's cheating. China is the one that's bringing the fentanyl in. China is the one. So, but the trade practices that China uses and manipulates the trade market all has to be sorted out. But yeah, I think you need a united front on that. The United States on its own would. I'm not sure anything.
There needs to be an agreement. There needs to, in relation to China, there needs to be an agreement that is at least with the United States, with European Union, with Canada, with Mexico, with other nations that are impacted by Chinese trade.
Exactly. If everybody showed a united front, they could get China to play more closely to the rules. But right now, what we're going to have is this Mexican standoff with between Xi and Trump. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but again, despite this, I still say, and despite this, and as I said, what happened is Nasdaq went up 9.7%, S&P went up 7.4%, and the Dow went up 6.0%. Despite those rises, Canada, and despite the more calm, Canada still needs to actually start moving in direction of not just solely trading with the US.
Well, if you notice what Carney's talking about here, the whole carbon tax thing and the whole pollution thing that the liberals up until now have championed, resistance of pipelines, resistance of new drilling for
Yeah.
oil, resistance of opening up more mines, the whole environmental thing that the liberals had and which stalled a lot of our progress. The liberals are throwing it right out. Climate change and stuff is way, way down the list now.
Yeah.
Bernie's in Alberta telling them they're going to be an energy superpower right here in Alberta, and we're going to get the pipes. We're going to sell as much oil as we can around the world, and all. That's a different story altogether.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely different story. And
They're just taking it right out of the
yeah.
conservative playbook.
Yeah, and the XL pipeline, the one across the Trans Canada pipeline, we're going to have to dust those off and get them working again.
Well, yeah, if we can get our oil to the coast and like so, the whole narrative has changed.
Yeah.
Whereas under the Justin Trudeau government, they were resisting development. They were insisting that Alberta meet these unreasonable demands on climate. Alberta says we can do it by 2050, but not 2035. All this stuff and
probably
going out the window now. They're going to
probably realistically 2050 is more realistic. Is I don't know. Our climate change friends will probably say, no, it's not. You've got they can do more, right? But 2050 is probably more realistic.
Well, the idea that Canada make less oil and sell less, as if that's going to help the climate. The reality is the world's going to need oil for a whole lot longer, and we need a piece of that market. Unfortunately, it will take time. It will take time to transfer to a greener economy. But in the meantime, the world has huge oil demands, and to reduce our production doesn't mean anything because somebody else will increase theirs.
Yeah.
So if we don't sell and try to capture as much of the market as we can, then somebody else will take our place.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, as the world transitions to hopefully towards a greener economy, we have to take advantage of the markets that are there.
Yep. All right. Anything else on these markets that we
only
need?
That as we see here, as I pointed out, 1% of the richest Americans own 50% of the stocks and securities, means that there's going to be a lot of pressure from a lot of wealthy people. And I think that's basically what's happened here. The pressure from on top has changed Donald Trump's mind in the meantime. But he had to do something. Everything was crashing. Now, his proponents will say, "Oh, this is all part of the plan. This is all part of the plan." I doubt it very much. I doubt that very much.
Yeah. Okay. So the other one we will look at, the other one we're looking at is okay. They now know why humans don't have tails. Oh, hang on a minute. Strange how a chief of Canada can tell another province what they can what they can and can't do.
Well, that's been the contention. Danielle Smith has pointed out this. Doug Ford has pointed out as, stay in your lane, federal government. You have your powers. We have ours. Don't try to step into our lane.
Well, that's the same. Yeah. You get the same in the US as well, with a federal state divide. Well,
that's the way our constitution, our government was set up right from the beginning. Yeah. The province has so many, independence in so many areas, and the Fed has its job to do, and the provinces tell the feds, particularly Alberta, because they've tried to interfere with the development of oil in and other things in Alberta, and Alberta says stay in your own lane. this is our jurisdiction. This is what we do. Stay in your own lane. And the other provinces done the same thing. Doug Ford has cooperated well with the federal government in many areas, but he's also said, stay in your own lane. This is what we do. This is what you do. You do what you do. We'll do what we do.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to that particular article, why humans don't have tails has been finally discovered.
Yeah. So there's a what is it? A DNA somewhere back in the time. Well, we noticed that the great apes don't have tails. The orangutans, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, the gibbons, they don't have tails. So somewhere in our shared history with other primates, we lost our tail.
Yeah. And the point being is that monkeys, which are also fairly closely related to us, do have tails, but apes don't. And it's something about the size of apes compared to the monkeys.
Well, it takes a lot of the monkeys. They can use their tails very well. A lot of the monkeys hang from their tails. I don't know.
That's true. Yeah. If we tried to hang from tails that we might have, we'd probably snap them off.
Well, there's this, but apes are still very, very good climbers. Like almost all the gorillas, the bigger ones don't climb. Well, they do, I guess, some, but
there's tree gorillas.
Yeah, the smaller ones are, but the great gorillas, I don't think they're not afraid of anything, so they might not go up into the trees, but definitely somewhere along the line we became more a primate for terrestrial stuff rather than going up into trees. And there's a DNA marker, I guess, that's pointed that out. That's always been a bit of a mystery for people who study such things, is how come the monkeys have a tail? We don't have a tail. Obviously we had one once upon a time, but we won't have one now. What's that all about?
And this was studied by this graduate student from New York University called Bozier, who's been the principal investigator about why we don't have tailbones, because he had a different theory.
Yeah, and I'd just like to put this out there. Probably his funding is being evaporated this very minute by Doge.
More than likely. And over millions of years, changes in DNA allow, of course, animals to change, to go through changes. And that's why animals evolve from one species to another, why all the change that has happened over time has occurred because demands on DNA have caused changes to our environment. We climb trees because it helped protect us.
It did, but remember what Darwin has said, and what Darwin has been vindicated in these things. If you don't need it, you lose it.
Yeah.
We find, for instance, the cave dwelling salamanders. They have what used to be eyes, and the remnants of them are still there, but they don't need them. They don't use them, so they're totally blind because they live in lightless places. The eyes don't do them any good. So the body begins to think, well, we don't need this, so there's no point in putting energy in developing that. But there is a point we can start.
We got noses, we got ears, things.
Yeah, they go by electro sensing, basically a sort of electrochemical sensing.
Yeah,
which gets them around in a dark cave where there's no light, and that's where they can find their prey or things they need to eat.
Yeah,
we find snakes. We find some of the more primitive snakes still have little claws at the back of their on their tails, where once they used to have legs. So that was an indication that somewhere along the line, a skink starts to turn into a snake, and the evolution says, well, we don't need these things. We don't have to spend energy making these legs because we found a better way of getting around.
And that's, of course, one of the things as to why we've developed white skin. Europeans developed white skin or lighter skin because we don't have the dramatic impact of the sun that African skies do.
Yeah, but there's also a better reason, and that is because lighter skin absorbs more vitamin D. So if you're living in an area where there's not a whole lot of sunlight, where you're not going to be damaged by the sun. In fact, you want the sun because you need the DNA.
You need the vitamin D, you mean?
Yeah, the vitamin D. You need the vitamin D, and it comes from the sun. And white skin absorbs a lot more vitamin D than dark skin does, which is an advantage in places where you don't have as much sunlight.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, that's actually part of the reason, the principal reason that Europeans have that light skin. And not just Europeans, because you look across the world, wherever there's areas whereby there's lacking sunlight, there's lighter skin tones.
Yeah. And so you would say, well, how come the Eskimos don't have light skin, or the Inuit? They have a darker skin. How come that is? And how come they don't?
Not that much darker, though, realistically, I don't think.
They're quite a bit more darker, and they got dark hair and all that. And the reason is they haven't had chance to, evolution hasn't kicked in yet.
Yeah.
As time goes on, they'll have lighter skin. Now, what you will find Inuit are shorter, stouter people. And that is an evolutionary response to staying warmer.
Yeah.
And that body type will hold heat better. So that's a quick evolutionary response. But the lighter skin thing, it takes longer.
Oh yeah, that didn't develop in 90 days or something like that. That develops over tens of thousands of years.
Yeah, our ancestors most likely came out of Africa and had dark skin. There's all kinds of studies on it now. They say, okay, things started happening around 8,000 years ago where blue eyes and lighter skin started happening. I think it was longer ago than that. I kind of figured that the Neanderthals would have been fair-skinned because they would have needed the sunlight really a lot. So, but those are very interesting things. Now, as I said before, and I was not being facetious, this person that's done this research may find their research grants drying up.
I know you weren't being facetious.
Yeah, that's one of the things Doge is doing, and unfortunately, they're picking. They're reducing the scientific wherewithal of the United States, which had the most enviable research in all the world.
Yeah.
And we may get some of that from, we may get some of their researchers, which would be a boon to us, but it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
That they're.
Okay, they called this jumping genes, right? Because they basically found that if they applied what's called jumping genes to mice lost their tails.
Huh. Well, how about that?
Right.
That? So what does the jumping gene actually do?
Yeah, the jumping gene is basically what's the basis of what we do. So we jump, we go up, climb trees, right? So that's the jumping gene that we.
Well, don't monkeys jump? Don't they climb up trees?
That's true. But again, they rely upon their tails. We don't.
Well, what I like
Probably calling it
there is the point where we didn't need the tail anymore.
Yeah.
And why?
Calling it the jumping gene is probably wrong. The name jumping gene is probably wrong. If we're honest,
that has to be explained a little bit more, I guess.
Yeah.
What the jumping gene actually is made.
But it's the genome section that makes the great apes, specifically great apes.
And I'm one big great ape.
Right. I think we can kind of call it quits at that one.
Yeah, that's really, really interesting, the way they figure this stuff out. multiple proteins and genes and all that. That is really, and mutations and all of those kind of things. It's just super fascinating. I kind of get a little bit jealous of people who were smart enough to get into these fields, because they'll be interested their whole life in their job they do. They will have just in their personal interest, and will just be, I mean, their whole life will be rewarding.
Yeah, I have to say that Darwin's Origin of Species, my mum had a copy of that. When I first read it, I was about 13 or 14. I found it fascinating.
I've got a copy here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got an old copy. I've got also the Descent of Man, the copy of that, which many religious groups severely criticize.
Yeah, it's very interesting that was it Huxley. Huxley, even though he didn't really believe a lot of what Darwin was proposing, he defended it. He defended it as scientific research and should be spoken of. And that I thought was very interesting. I thought Huxley was in his camp the whole way, but apparently he had some doubts about what Darwin was saying. However, Darwin has been vindicated over and over and over again.
Yeah, yeah.
Problem with Darwin, however, is not him. Darwin got a pretty bad name, not because of him. It's because people adapted what they called social Darwinism, that different people are better than other people, and they tried to use Darwin to justify it.
Yeah, that's a complete hoax.
I had to explain that to a friend of mine who was a scientist, because a lot of these people, racists and supremacists and stuff like that, started using social Darwinism. Darwin got a bad name, and I had to explain it was nothing to do with Darwin. If you look at Darwin's stuff, it's got nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah.
It's really just real science.
Yeah.
And observation.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
Yeah.
And the irony here,
if you look at Nietzsche, when people think of Nietzsche, always a bad guy because the Nazis used his ideology. No, the Nazis didn't use his ideology. The Nazis perverted his ideology.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like an Islamic that blows up a bridge, or with a lot of people on it, or something like that. They're not. They've taken and perverted the Islamic teachings.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. All right. And let's, I think, leave it there.
Okay. Without further ado, I bid you adieu. And I think that top 1% of the American wealthy that own 50% of the wealth of the country are going to have a chat or two with Donald Trump.